change my mind halfway through the video. Fun, fun, fun. Technical challenge number, I don't know, lost count. But it's fun. That's what we're here for. The whole of this video is going to be about cutting a small slot in a piece of wood. A very simple little task, you'd think. I have my bridge blank, and I have my bridge plans, if you want to call them that. My little paper template. And we have to cut a slot at an angle. This is the intonation slope. The bass string is 3mm longer than the treble string, so that's 3mm in 55mm. Now, the obvious way to do this is with a router, but getting this large, heavy router to move smoothly over the top of the work in a very precise path clearly needs a template. It needs something large sitting over the work, which needs to be anchored down over the top of a small piece of wood, which must not move. It must be guided. I don't have any guide bushings for this. Something maybe I need to buy in future, but I think the set is something like £60. That's one of the poor points about this, is it doesn't come with much in the way of add-ons. So I have abandoned the idea of having the router move over the top of the work. I will need a jig, it'll need a lot more work and maybe some money spent on it. So the alternative is to have the router fixed over the top and move the work underneath. And then the problem becomes how to mount the work in such a way, in a sled or whatever, so that it's moving at the correct angle, because clearly we've got to be cutting in from the sides. We're not working parallel to the sides of the piece. Now, it's odd how these things evolve as you're working on them. I had this all planned out. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to mount the rosewood in an MDF sled, which would be square around that, with the rosewood at an angle inside it, so that we can move it backwards and forwards in front of the router. In fact, confession, I'm not going to be using the router. I'm going to be using a pillar drill. More on that in a minute. This isn't the best way of doing it. There are limitations to using a pillar drill. So, when I was thinking about this, what I realised is, because of the width of this, I have a little bit to play with. That is going to be about there in the middle of the work. I need a little bit of extra at the ends. I'm going to make this a little bit wider, I think, because I moved the patch on the surface of the guitar back a little bit, so I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger around the back here by a couple of millimeters. But we have a fair bit of rosewood around the edges to play with. So actually what we can do is just cut off the edges at an angle, plane them down nice and smoothly, get it all accurate and parallel, and then our newly shaped twisted bridge blank will slide nicely backwards and forwards in the work. What I might do is I might also take the ends off it, but I've got to be a little bit careful because we haven't got much to play with at the ends. But it would be nice to have the ends square as well, so that it will work against end stops underneath the router. So that's the plan. And we're just going to clamp some guides onto the table and backwards and forwards. But that is not going to be the router table, I don't think. I'm talking myself out of this. Now, slightly weird things just happened, in that I've changed my mind while talking to the camera. Sorry, to you, the people out there. I had talked myself out of using the router here. I was going to use the pillar drill, so I can see exactly what's going on. The pillar drill mounted above the work and me guiding it backwards and forwards. Well, it's locked into the guides, and then I'm just moving it backwards and forwards, and I can see what's going on. And I've done a bit of testing. There is a very nice clean slot in that, so the pillar drill does work in that respect. But there are disadvantages. The bit is going way too slow in a pillar drill. I believe routers go up to something like 30,000 RPM, 25,000, something like that. Whereas my pillar drill goes up to 2,600, just not even a tenth of the speed that this router goes at. And speed gives you a clean cut. There will be tear out, although there didn't seem to be much tear out when I did my little experiment. And any little bits of tear out on the surface, we're going to be planing this down another 0.5 millimeter anyway. I think the thing that worries me about using a router table with this over the top is that you can't see what's happening. You're reliant completely on how you've got the thing set up. Is that going to be an issue? Maybe not. The fact that we won't have a sled for this, the fact that it's just going to be a single piece of wood locked into guides on the table, means that the possibilities of it waggling around and moving are significantly less. And I think I'm going to give it a go. I think I'm going to mount this in my router table, slap this down over the top blind, move it backwards and forwards the prerequisite 77 millimeters, and there we go, everything done. I hope I've made the right decision here. Let's give it a go. Let's get this shaped up first anyway. And who knows, maybe I'll change my mind halfway through the video. Fun, fun, fun. Oh dear. Oh, that's that up. I don't think I can get the cut going again, can I? Maybe I can. Yeah, there we go. Right. I don't know what bit of rosewood's supposed to smell of roses, but to me that smells of stables. Or horses. Maybe horses smell of straw. But it's not unpleasant. For my birthday recently, my other half bought me this lovely little block plane. And I think the first thing I need to do is sharpen it. This has been ground, all the tool marks are in it, and there's even a notch in the end of the blade. It seems well made, but the blade clearly needs work on it. So next thing, let's get this sharp. Let's try it out on the rosewood. So I'm going to start off on 250 grit, which seems a bit silly on a brand new chisel, plane, but there's one hell of a burr on this, and there's a nice little lump missing out the front of it. Very coarsely ground. grit. It's already starting to look better. At least there's no notch in the blade anymore. 8,000 grit. I hate to use the term sharp enough, but I think that's sharp enough for the work we need to do here. I need to go back through the grits, back through the grades, and get rid of these tool marks. And I think my 250 grit stone needs flattening. I think it needs flattening every time I use it, to be honest. We haven't got polish on this side of the blade. I'm not going to strop this. In fact, looking at this now, I can still see machine marks on the front of this blade. But this is good enough for what we want at the moment, but next time I use the plane I will go back through all of the grits. Let's see how that is. There's some super fine shavings coming off this. That's nice. It's good. Ooh, again we have that smell of stables or horses. Yeah, we've just got to take a little bit off here. I'd rather be planing at that actually, but the grain direction is awkward. Little technique I've learnt there is that when you're just planing this bit, so that you don't have an edge where the blade stops, you just lift the back of the plane and it naturally comes out of the work. So you just lift it up and then you're only planing this part of the work. And then when you're happy that I'm guessing that's probably near enough, and we'll just take a full length shaving. And we seem to be pretty much parallel. It's spot on 50, 50.23. Of course, a lot. No, actually, I think the variation is how I'm using the calipers. Obviously, you've got to get them perpendicular to the face. Right, I'm going to square up the ends very carefully from it. I understand the way to plane end grain is to plane diagonally. Right, we have our 2.5mm router bit, just there, the height of which is going to be critical, but that's probably about right. I think I should be a little bit more accurate than just probably. I actually have a piece of wood which is 3mm thick, I believe. It was an offcut of the bridge plate. It's 3.5mm, which is perfect. Okay, so in theory that's now the right height. So it now just remains to work out where to put the fence. And it should be as simple as making it 21mm away from the centre of the bit. Take a little piece of sandpaper, fold it into 3, place it underneath the wood that needs to be clamped, and then when we clamp it, it won't move. Piece of sandpaper, fold it in 3, stick it underneath, check that we're 21mm. That's not going anywhere. Right, in theory, our cut should be right over the top of the router bit. So now we have to set, well, we'll set another fence here so it's held rigid, can't go backwards and forwards. So another, oh, this clamp's going to get in the way. No, there we go, we're alright. Just hope I've got enough clamps. These I'm going to screw in a couple of extra holes in the top of my table, I don't think will matter. So then we'll be able to just slide backwards and forwards 77mm. That's the idea. measure cut. So that should be 135mm from the edge of the blade. I'm going to have this 71mm long, so the blade is only going to be moving 69mm. So we need the end stops to be 197 plus 69 is 206. So they should be 266. So they should be 266 apart, which they are. Oh my word, right, okay. So when I'm up against that edge stop, we are against that mark there. Ignore the bigger mark. I was going to make these wider, I'm not. I'm going to go to my original marks, which are just there and there. So when we're up against that one, this edge of the blade is against that mark. And when we're up against this stop here, there, the other side of the blade is against that mark there. Like so. Right. The one end stop, that's not going to go anywhere. So when we're against that end stop, this edge of the blade is here. When we're against that end stop, the other edge of the blade is at the mark. Again. Yeah, so the scoring is right along where it should be. I think we're ready to go. I'm going to try to connect up the hoover to the dust extraction just so we can suck out the shavings, and away we go. Things are about to get very loud, and I'll have my hearing protection in. I'm going to start it up, drop it down in the middle. I have to actually ease these two bits apart to get them in because I've got these quite tight, but I don't want any movement. And then move it that way, switch off the router, take it out. Simple. Moment of truth. Well, from here that looks perfect. I hope it's deep enough. Whew, another task done. In considering using my pillar drill to route this, one of my concerns was that I was getting a little bit too much movement, whether it would be in the bearing of the pillar drill or the way I was holding it against the guide. But the slot was coming out a little bit wide and my bridge blank was a little bit on the loose side. That is not the case here. That is a very, very snug fit. So I'm very happy with that. Yay!